Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Arit, and this is Emotional Billionaire. And today we're going to be talking about honesty, as well as confidence and resentment, and what I call the silent compromise. And what people often don't know is that honesty and being honest with yourself is at the root of healthy confidence. I'm not talking about arrogance that's really brittle and people get very easily agitated and upset and get angry. I'm talking about in your gut, in your core, knowing who you are. And a lot of times fear and shame and other feelings get in the way of letting us just know what our thoughts and feelings are. And if that's something you're struggling with, I always recommend people try to find a therapist. I want to be very clear that nothing I'm doing is medical treatment. That is something that you need to seek, individualized treatment and get assessed, and having someone, work through with you on shame and other, trauma and other kinds of things. For now, we are going to talk about the importance of honesty, because we're constantly getting the message in society: you should fake it till you make it. You should pretend. You should just make sure you're perceived a certain way. But that never leads to confidence, because what it does lead is constantly checking, what's their reaction? What does someone think about me? How will this be perceived? And you start to attune more and more to other people and less to yourself. Did I like that? Is it what I want? How does it make me feel? It's also harder to attune to other people because you're not actually asking yourself, how do they feel? What do they want? Is this making them happy? What's their experience? So it becomes this sort of self-focused, I'm going to think about another person's view of me, but you're not actually attending to yourself or the other person's reality. And so one way to break this pattern is to just start by telling the truth more, which I know is very hard for a lot of people to do. So we're going to talk about a very specific example or a situation that I call the silent compromise. I came up with this after years of private practice and observing relationships and seeing that people really struggle with saying what they want directly, and instead they try to hint at it. But sometimes it goes even further than that, and a person does what I call a silent compromise, which is essentially you make a compromise, you make a trade, you say, I'm going to do this for another person to do that, but you don't tell the other person, right? You've made a deal in your head and the other person has no clue. So you do extra chores, or you compliment somebody, or you don't criticize, or you don't actually ask for the activity you wanted to do, or the project at work, or, roommates, this comes up a lot, relationships, this come up. I needed someone to focus on me, or I needed cuddles, or I needed time, or I needed quiet. And instead of actually just saying, hey, I need this, is this something you're comfortable doing, saying, giving, not doing, whatever, you do this other activity and then you wait. And most of the time, I would say invariably, but I guess over decades, I've seen a few examples where this doesn't exactly work. But over all this time, what happens is when the other person doesn't do what you've been wanting, you start to feel pretty angry or upset. And if you don't know how to tolerate being angry, then you'll flip and you'll start feeling internalized like hatred or shame or depression. What's wrong with me? But at the root of it is you're upset because you didn't get what you wanted and what you needed, but you didn't get it because the other person had no idea. And people often say to me, well, if it were me, I would blah, 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 blah. And however you finish that sentence, that might be true. But if that other person isn't you, they have no way of knowing. And this builds up in relationships a lot, all sorts of different relationships. And a lot of times what will happen is the thing that you do for the other person is not something you actually wholeheartedly want to do. In fact, sometimes it feels a little bit like, okay, I'm violating my own boundaries. Like I'm only willing to do this if this is what I'm going to get, but you don't acknowledge that to yourself. So you just say, okay, I'm going to do this because I'm a good person, or I'm going to do this because maybe it will work out, or I'm just going to do this because it's not a big deal. Or another one I hear a lot is because what I want doesn't matter. And that really puts you in this position to get resentful over time, because you have a ledger of all these things you've done, and the other person has done none of the things you want, but they have no idea. This is all within your head. And I don't mean like you're making it up that it's not happening. I mean, they don't know. And they might want to give you what you want. They might not, but at this point, they have no idea. So one of the big reasons why people do this is because we are taught to shame a lot of the things that we need and the things that we want, especially people who have been socialized female. When we're taught to caretake for others, we're supposed to think about what we can give, not what we need. And in a healthy, happy life, you need both parts. Giving is amazing. Getting is amazing. One-sided is going to lead to resentment if you're just giving. And if you're just getting, it's going to lead to aloneness and entitlement. And you'll also not be happy. You really want a reciprocity. The degree depends on the relationship, right? People have different levels that they need to feel reciprocal. So when people feel like they're not supposed to feel vulnerable, or they shouldn't be upset about something, or they're asking for too much tenderness or too much intimacy, or why do I have to ask, I don't want to ask my partner to know that I'm sad or disappointed. I don't want to burden them. All of these sort of soft, what we call in psychology, dependency needs, the things that we need from other people. In our culture, we're taught that's a sign of weakness, which is a total lie. It's actually a sign of strength. If you pretend that you don't need anybody, you will just use people and it will be invisible to you and you will be quite brittle and it's much easier to get angry. And I do not recommend going down that route. Or you'll become self-sacrificing like a martyr and you, what my husband calls, cannibalize yourself and take parts and parts and parts away from you to give, the giving tree, right? That metaphor. And what you really want is to get sort of that back and that forth with people. And so a big part is just to own and say, I'm scared to ask this, or I want something and it's hard for me to tell you that I want it. But to be able to name for yourself, this is a fear, this is shame, that's what underlying why I can't ask for it. To this, you limit yourself to this, and you will feel tiny and not like a full, whole person. So part of what happens in the silent compromise is you might not even know what you want because you may be censoring it from yourself. And that's why I talk about honesty and truth, is that you start to practice, wait, what if I don't censor myself? People will so often talk about how, well, I shouldn't want it. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter because you do. What you should or you shouldn't want it is completely irrelevant. You want it, that's the starting point. Let's start there. Talk from that place. I want X, right? And to be very clear, I'm not talking about like really extreme, bad for other people kinds of things. I'm talking about what are really normal human interactions that people deny themselves all the time. So another reason why somebody might be doing a lot of these kinds of compromises with people, and this one's really tricky, is that the other person is actually a bad collaborator. We all have people in our lives that don't actually want to collaborate. They don't actually want to say, okay, here's what I want, here's what you want. How do we make sure we both get what we want? People who can say, oh, I contributed this to the dynamic. This helped, this hurt. Oh, this might have had a negative reaction for you. They can own what they've done. Oh, I want to grow. Oh, I want to change. But there are people who, as their general stance is, it's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. It's not my problem, it's someone else's problem. And they like to pair up with people who are really good at saying, this is my fault, this is my fault, this is my fault. And they sort of link up so that one person doesn't ever have to worry about the other person's perspective. I'm good at taking. And then the person who's giving is like, maybe if I give, I'll magically get. Maybe if I give, I'll magically get. But those people aren't really interested in giving. That's not what they agreed to when they agreed to the relationship. They got trained that they're the person who receives. And with those kinds of people who don't have any interest in collaborating, you don't ask because you know they're actually not interested. This is my manage or collaborate flow chart, and it will be on Instagram for you to look at. The links are going to be below. And what I've done is I've basically tried to help you figure out, is this a relationship where I can actually collaborate or do I need to manage? And the reason I made this is because people get so confused because they think, oh, well, the other person must be trying. They must be trying, even if there's actually no evidence. As you go through this, it becomes pretty clear that when a person cares about you, you're going to collaborate. But when they don't actually care about what you want or what your experience is or what you're asking for, you're going to manage. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they try to explain their reasons to someone they need to manage because you just hope, if I can explain why I want what I want, they'll be convinced and then they'll give it to me. But if someone has never consistently cared about what you want, why do you think they're going to start now? And that's a big problem. And, that's a time where you might want to start therapy. I often recommend, if someone's being emotionally abusive, that's a really complicated kind of dynamic. I recommend Lundy Bancroft's amazing book of Why Does He Do That? About angry men. It's really heteronormative. I tell my queer patients and friends and family members to sort of read it, and you have to translate it in your mind. But the ideas are pretty much there. And if you have a person who doesn't want to collaborate with you, not really, then you have to manage. And the people who have taught me about managing the most are my patients who are the children of alcoholics, because they have had to learn how to manage their parents from a very young age. Here's what I do to not make them angry. Here's what I do to set boundaries. Here's how I predict their mood. Now, people take that point and they really run with it if they've had a parent that you had to really attune to, or you might get punished or have a interpersonal like attention withdrawn or affection withdrawn. You start to really attend to the other person and anticipate what their needs are. And that's not really sustainable because, again, the more you attend and only attune, what do they want? What are they thinking? The less you know, okay, what am I thinking? What is it that I want? And so you have this pull. And so when you manage, and I'm going to be talking more about managing, basically when you manage, you stop decoding, right? You don't hear the voicemail and think, oh, mom said she's okay. But what she's really thinking is, I'm mad. I need to solve this problem. I shouldn't do it. I should cancel my plans. I should just go home. If they want those things, they have to explicitly ask you. So you just sort of practice not decoding and taking what people say very, very literally and let them have to express what they want. So then it's much easier to say no if someone asks you. If they sort of hint at it and threaten interpersonal punishment. But part of that managing is to say, it's boundaries, right? We hear a lot about boundaries and people very much are still learning how do you basically say, okay, this is what I'm going to do if you don't listen to me. And you don't challenge the person. You focus on very concrete things, what you need from them, what you're willing to get from them, and you get less relational and more transactional, but very explicitly. Okay, I'm going to do this for you. Will you do this for me? Or I need you to do X. And it makes a huge difference. If the person you're talking to can collaborate with you, then it's a whole different world. You co-create. That's what my husband's name is Paul. I'm going to be talking about him a lot. We talk about how we've been together for 22 years, 22 ecstatically happy years together, even through very difficult times in the rest of our lives. And you co-create. You work together to make the dynamic. What's important to you? What do you prioritize? And a big part of that is giving the other person a chance to meet your needs. Don't assume that you're a burden. And side note, People are so scared of being burdens. And I'm like, what's the problem? We love people and we're fine if they burden us. It's not that big of a deal. We are going to burden people. I have a lot of physical disabilities, and I know that my disabilities can sometimes burden my husband because they burden me. And he helps me. And we both wish that weren't the case, but we also both know that's part of it, right? It's part of life together in the same way that, I'm also helping him in other ways and he helps me, and you sort of share the burdens and you share the good times. And people really love getting to support and love someone they love, So give someone in your life a chance to be there for you. Give them a chance to pamper you. And by pampering, I just mean like attending, cuddling, tenderness, listening. Give them a chance to respond. I talk about my 3 main values of honesty, nuance, and joy. And silent compromise is part of honesty. And there is a freebie for you in the description. If you look in the description, you will see where to go to request these guides, and they'll be emailed to you, all for free. You're also very much encouraged and invited. Like and subscribe to this channel. That's also free for people who don't know. And it lets the YouTube algorithm know that you want to see more of my videos. Before we talk about what you can do to change and make this better, to name that doing silent compromises, and people, if you do not like conflict, if you are avoidant for conflict, you will love silent compromises, and you will spend a lot of time in your own head being upset about things, and it's like sucks your energy into a void because all of your actions aren't going anywhere and all of your internal feelings aren't going anywhere other than into the void. And it's very depleting, and it replaces love and giving with resentment and distance and isolation in all sorts of relationships, friendships, family, work, romantic, siblings, all sorts of relationships between people. So if you go and pull up my freebie, you will see the steps written out for you. And we're going to go over the 6 steps, okay? Step 1, tell them what you did. So you just start and say, but I went ahead and I went to the store and I spent a lot of money on toilet paper and paper towels and, basics, flour and staples and things like that. I scrubbed the kitchen and then I scrubbed the bathroom and I put a lot of time into it. Step 2, tell them what you wanted for what you did. So when I did all that cleaning, what I actually really wanted was for you to remember that you agreed to clean the kitchen too. And you also agreed that you would take the trash out. And that hasn't happened in a while. And I thought that maybe if I did all this work, it would help you remember. But it didn't. Step 3, tell them why you couldn't just tell them right away. Okay, so I didn't tell you about the cleaning thing because I don't want to be a difficult roommate. I'm worried that you might not want to live with me anymore and that you might decide not to invite me places, that if I tell you I'm upset, you'll just think I'm too much trouble. And this is if you've done some introspection, and also when I was growing up, if I asked one of my parents for something extra, they would kind of get mad at me. And I learned, if I don't ask, people don't leave. People don't get angry. So I didn't want to ask you because I didn't want you to be upset. And I was scared to say, it actually does matter to me if you do your chores because it makes me feel like we're in it together and not you just expect me to do all the chores and clean for you. Step 4, ask them what they think about it. So, okay. So what's your take? Is cleaning the living room and doing the trash in the kitchen, is that something that you're open to? What were your expectations? How did you have a reaction did you even notice that I cleaned? Did you have a reaction to it? What's your take on the cleaning thing? I want to know if this is something you're interested in doing or not. Like, do we need another system? Are you upset? Do you have any feelings about it? Step 5, you ask them, well, what's important to you in this situation? So, all right, so I've been talking about cleaning and chores. What part of the cleaning process is important to you? You know, like some people really care that the pots and pans are cleaned. Some people want the floor to be smooth. Some people don't actually care as long as there's always toilet paper. And some people are annoyed that they have to think about it in the first place. And some people actually don't care about the cleaning. They're happy to do it. But what they actually want is like, well, I want us to have a roommate dinner once a week, or I want us to watch the show together, or I want us to like go and have an outing together and have some fun together. That's what's actually important to me, right? So can you tell me what in this situation, what's actually important to you? And then the last step, step 6 is, all right, let's talk about how can we both get what we want? What's a way for you to get what's important for you and for me to get what's important for me, at least to some degree, in some way? And people are really scared of this because they're like, well, what if the person just says no? And you both have to know these conversations may be ongoing, right? You may need to do it, go back and then talk again and reflect. Okay, how did the change affect you? Did you like what I did? How did you feel? Did that feel good for you? Did it not feel good for you? You need to work together and figure out, okay, and it's not, people think of it in terms of compromise. And I actually don't believe in compromise with people you collaborate with. Compromise is what you do when you don't trust somebody. Collaborate is, I care about what I want and what you want and our relationship. You care about what you want and what I want and the relationship. So you take all those considerations and then you problem solve together. All right, if you like literally just write them down, these are our considerations. Now you problem solve together to get as many of those things met as possible. And you're not saying, well, what if you're not trading? You're being creative. And you're saying, okay, what really matters to me? And it's important to know, you know what? No, I really can't. I can't tolerate not getting this. So this needs to be like a must have. And sometimes you might not be able to live with somebody. You might actually be incompatible. And then you either decide, okay, you know what? We can't pretend. Or you say, I'm going to be angry or upset, but I'm going to keep it to myself. And we're just going to get through it. And at the end of the year, we can decide if we want to be friends and really talk about it. Sometimes you just have to manage and get through it. But that's not what I'm talking about. Collaboration means you both care, right? And you both want to make it better. And you both want to heal that resentment on both ends. And most of the time, both people have stuff they've been doing and the other person didn't know what they actually wanted. And it's just so liberating. And then all this energy gets freed up because you just say, oh, I wanted this thing. And once you say, I wanted this thing, if you don't get it, it's not the end of anything. You might feel disappointed or sad, but that energy has been released. So most people just feel better and you don't have to feel ashamed about it or hide it. And it's like, oh, I wanted that. I didn't get it. Either I'm going to try to get it somewhere else or I'm going to focus on something else or I'm going to grieve it and be sad and disappointed. And then once you accept it, you've integrated that desire back into yourself. Then you can go back to enjoying other feelings and other activities. Through the 6 steps of addressing that you have been doing a silent compromise and how to name your part of what you did, what you wanted, how you feel about it, how they feel, and coming up with a solution together. And it can be such a bonding experience when you do this with somebody else. Now let's talk about how you prevent resentment. I'm in a 22-year marriage without any resentment to my husband, and he has no resentment towards me. When I talk about this stuff, I'm living it, And we'll even say to each other, wait, I think maybe I'm starting to do a silent compromise, right? We stop it before it starts. Okay, you say, all right, here's what I think I want. Here's why I'm scared to ask for it. And you go through those steps before, right? You're not undoing the hurt. You're asking the other person, What are your considerations? What are my considerations? How do we meet both sets of considerations? And it becomes easier over time when you develop a language for it with whoever in your life is doing this. My siblings and I do this all the time, right? With them, like, let's say I ran an errand for one of my siblings, or I helped with something, but I was expecting that they would, and it's not that I would get something in return, but there was a specific thing I was waiting for. But if I didn't tell them, then they have no idea. So I'm just really honest, right? Like, I'm only willing to do that under these circumstances. Like, I need the activity to end by this time. So a couple of things you want to not do. Do not violate your own boundaries. Do not do things that make you feel icky or weird or bad or exploited or used, if you can help it. If you can't help it and you have to do those things, be as honest with yourself as possible. I don't want this. This isn't my choice. This feels like a violation, and I'm doing it because I need to manage this person, right? So if you can't be honest with the other person, then at least be honest yourself. Let's say you realize, okay, I'm constantly doing this and the other person I'm with doesn't really care at all. Then it's definitely time, I would encourage you to seek a therapist. And I don't mean couples therapy. That can often be used as a weapon, actually. And if a person's really manipulative, they'll actually use couples therapy and be more selfish and just be better at it. So I would actually say start with your individual therapy and start talking about what it is that you want, what your experience is like. Be really clear with the therapist. Okay, I don't really want to leave this person. So don't say that right now, but I need help in coping, what to do about it. That sort of thing, so that you can get some help navigating and managing your own stress. So again, there are certain situations where I would say you absolutely want to seek out professional help. But in a lot of situations, it's just people just don't know. We're not taught how to do this. It's not a skill that's really developed. We're supposed to try to predict what people want. And people cannot read your mind. But another part of my secret is my husband Paul and I have been telling each other our actual feelings and thoughts and reactions for so long that at this point, a lot of the time I actually can read his mind and he can read mine. When he touches me, I know what he's thinking. So if you actually put in the time and effort to put words to things, eventually you do actually become a lot better at mind reading. And you always have to have a check of am I reading this correctly? But you can also tell by your own reactions. So if you actually want that kind of relationship where someone intuits what you want, then go through these steps and start telling them and start talking about it and see what stuff does it bring for you? What stuff does it bring for them? And it can be really, as I said, bonding, can feel really good that someone else cares about what you want so much that they're willing to have not one, but an ongoing conversation that ultimately they want to make you happy. And I want you to start thinking about that. So I'm reminding you that if you look in the description of this video, you will have links to go and get the freebie, which spells out in detail and gives you step-by-step what to ask and what to say. And just start using the concept of silent compromise in your life. My siblings have been using it, and one of my sisters keeps saying, when are you going to start Emotional Billionaire? I need other people to know what I'm talking about when I say silent compromise, because people do this all the time. And one way of knowing when you're in a silent compromise is when you find yourself feeling resentful or frustrated, and you tell somebody else about what you want, but not the person involved. That's a good tell. If you have to tell a third person and not the person themselves what you want, you're already in the situation where you're not actually being open about what you want and need. I hope that this has been helpful. I am really excited to see in the comments, what part of this do you guys like? What resonates? Are there any situations that this has been helpful for? Any suggestions that you have? And as always, anything you want me to talk about, any more questions, details, I'm really, really excited about having this be a dialogue in a community with all of you. So this is Dr. Arit from Emotional Billionaire. Thank you for joining me today, and I'm excited for you to learn how to love being you. Bye-bye.